Good evening and welcome to the Monday, July 24th Administrative and Public Works Committee meeting. We have a quorum. Is there approval to approve a motion to approve the July 10th minutes?
Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions, comments, or edits? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Items for consideration. Item A1, Alderman Fleming.
Payroll June 26, 2017 through July 9, 2017 in the amount of $3,252.87 and, $87.41.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions? Everyone's had an opportunity to review the bills list?
Yes.
Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Alderman Rainey, item A2.
A2, we're being asked to recommend approval to the council of the bills list through July 25 in the amount of $2,608,589.35 and credit card activity with the period ending May 31 in the amount of $215,521.46. Move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Alderman Fleming for the second. Seeing no questions, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Alderman Sufferton, item A31.
A31 is a sole source renewal of annual Cisco SmartNet software support contracts and licenses from CDW in the amount of $54,445.68.
Is there a second?
Second.
Did you get someone down for that, Janella? Okay. Seeing no lights, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Alderman Simmons, item 3.2, please.
Agreement amendment for Northwestern football parking on the Evanston-Wilmette Golf Course during home football games. Staff recommends approval of the Evanston-Wilmette Golf Course Association's request for amendment of the existing 3-year agreement to continue to park cars on holes 1, 2, 11, and 12 of the golf course during NU games. This amendment is requesting approval to pilot tailgating on hole number 12. Currently, only parking is allowed on hole number 12. This pilot program would be evaluated at the end of the 2017 season. This is for action.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Seeing no lights, I just have one quick question for staff. This is just an aside. So over the weekend, I was at the main parking lot. Is there any time that residents can just park in there? It looked like by reading the sign, it seemed like it was just restricted to football games and during the day. Is that true?
So Alderman, when you say main parking lot, could you
Just
please?
right across the street from Dyke Stadium, you know, the long major football parking lot.
I believe that-
Central Street. I can ask you offline.
So I think, I do have representatives here, Alderman from NU, who could probably address that, but that's NU's property.
Crystal clear.
And so I think that will be a question most directly better for them.
Okay.
So if,
I'm sure Ricky Boss
you
can.
got a solution or an answer to that?
Yeah, I mean, the parking lot is open and available anytime after
That's what I thought.
4 on the weekdays and every weekend,
Perfect.
or, like you said, for special events.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Seeing no further lights, thanks you, Director Hemingway. All those in favor of passing item A3.2, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Item 3.3 is a change order number 1 to the water treatment plant reliability improvements project with the Thielman Construction Company, and that's in a dollar amount of $35,611. This increase, I guess the total is currently $1,282,611, and that's what it'll go to. Pardon me. The price was $1,247,000, and the increase will be $1,282,611. This is for action.
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Alderman Fleming, item 3.4.
Contract with Schroeder and Schroeder Incorporated for 2017 alley and street improvements. Staff is recommending City Council authorize the city manager to execute a contract for 2017 alley and street improvement project with Schroeder and Schroeder in the amount of $1,301,882.10. The project consists of improvements of 5 alleyways throughout the city, street resurfacing on Dewey Avenue and on North 2 Payne Street, and the installation of traffic calming speed bumps on various streets and speed bumps in various alleys. Funding is coming from the CIP fund, the parking fund, and the sewer fund. And this is for action.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Alderman Rainey?
Yes. Question I had was the total cost of this project is $1.3 million, et cetera. It said that the budget for the project was, I believe, $1,576,000.
Mm-hmm.
I looked all over the information we had in our packet, and then it said this project is $5,071.61 over budget. So there must be information we don't have in here regarding expenditures, and I'm just wondering if that could be explained to us. Because when I subtract $1.3 million from $1.5 million, I get a little left over.
I think Director Stoneback's going to respond to that.
Good evening. Dave Stoneback, Public Works Agency Director. So the budget that is overspent by the $5,000 is the alley paving from the 2017 GO bonds, the first line on that table on page 154. So you can see that we only budgeted $250,000 for special assessment paving of alleys through the 2017 GO bonds, and the actual price to do those 2 alleys that needs to be funded from the GO bonds is $255,071.61. So it is that specific funding category that we are over in, and we wanted to bring that to your attention.
So, to continue, I was a little surprised to see that on the North Brummel Alley, the 700 block, that we chose to do a green alley that I'm thrilled about. I'm so proud that we're going to do another green alley in my ward. But, I mean, that's double the price of an
costs
alley.
more, yeah.
So why did we choose to do that? And what was the discussion about doing that? Because I know we can't do a green alley everywhere because of the soil. So what, do you know what that was? Because that would have saved a couple $100,000.
And that was staff's decision based on what we perceived was direction from the City Council to put in green infrastructure where it was feasible. And so we went out and during the design phase, during the surveying phase, we actually went out and did a percolation test to make sure that putting in a green alley would work at this location. It does, and therefore we elected to put the green alley in.
I'm not complaining. I'm just thinking dollars, that's all.
Alderman Fleming?
Don't change your
I'm
mind.
sorry. I'm sorry. Alderman Fleming?
So I have a question, Dave. If you can just help me to understand how these alleys were chosen, particularly the CDBG and the special assessments.
The special assessment alleys are decided based on a petition is sent. Residents come in and ask to have a petition to pave their alley by special assessment. They go out, they have to get over 50% of the adjoining properties to agree to the special assessment process, and then it's really pretty much based on the first come, first served basis. Right now in the special assessment alley funding, we have enough petitions that have already gone through the Board of Local Improvements that we've already know which alleys will be paved through 2020, I believe, maybe it's 2021. So we aren't even putting applications out yet, because if we did, 5 years from now, the same residents may not even be there. On the CDBG funding, staff makes recommendations to that committee to get funding for these alleys. it rotates from ward to ward. Generally, we only get funding for one alley, and so we pick an alley that qualifies in a certain ward, and then the next year we recommend an alley in a different ward, and it rotates. I think that there's either 4 or 5 wards that have areas that meet the CDBG requirements, so it kind of rotates from ward to ward on that basis. If we are successful in getting additional funding and do 2 alleys one year, then it just is a quicker rotation of what ward gets the funding then.
Right, thank you.
Alderman Rainey?
I think it's even more specific than ward. It's census block even. I mean, I think there actually has to be a survey of sorts for the block.
That's correct. The area has to qualify to get CDBG funding, and there are those areas in 4 or 5 wards that qualify, and then we rotate it around based on just a rotation of order.
All right. Seeing no more lights, all those in favor of passing item 3.5, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
3.4? Pardon me, 3.5. Am I wrong? You okay? 3.4, my apologies. All those in favor of passing item 3.4, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Item 3.5. Who's got that?
Is that me?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our staff is recommending that we suggest to the City Council that we authorize the manager to execute a contract for the 2017 parking garage improvements with Bully and Andrews Concrete Restoration in the amount of $237,354. This money is coming from the parking fund. This is for action.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been properly moved and second. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Alderman Sufferton, item 3.6, please.
3.6 is a sidewalk cafe for Furious Spoon at 1700 Maple. They're a first-time applicant.
Second.
Quick question. Come on up. Do you want to take a moment to quickly tell us what you're doing? And then I have a quick question for you.
Yes, so first of all, my name is Shin Thompson. I am one of the owners of Furious Spoon Restaurant, which is a ramen chain, which we started in the city of Chicago. Ramen is a Japanese traditional noodle where we serve traditional, it's a traditional ramen shop. We are implementing a bar as part of the concept. Alcohol sales is roughly 20% of the sales mix for the restaurant. So we're primarily a food service establishment hoping to enhance the experience by serving liquor.
Perfect. And so, nice to meet you. I'm actually a ward alderman, so welcome to having seen the ward. I've seen the website. It looks great. So I've received just one email concern about the sidewalk coming from Optimum Views.
Yes.
And to our staff, how late is Tara and Vine's patio? Is it till 1 o'clock? All right. So the only concern is that I'll pass along, and I'm sure you'll keep an eye on it, is having the hours of operation going till 1 o'clock a.m. There's some concerns from the neighbors about the noise.
Yes.
So if that's something you can pay attention to, I don't know.
Sure. That's something that we can certainly monitor, and our staff has measures to keep the noise down. As far as, if it does get too loud outside, we can always bring them inside, since the restaurant itself is fairly large.
Perfect. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, congratulations. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Item 3.7, Alderman Simmons.
Contract with Warren Langley for design, manufacture, and installation of lighted sculpture at the Green Bay Emerson Ridge intersection. Staff recommends that council authorizes the city manager to enter into a contract with Warren Langley, Australian artist, for RFP to design, manufacture, and install a lighted sculpture in the underpass of the Green Bay Emerson Ridge intersection in the amount of $88,897.50. This is funded from Capital Improvement Neighborhood Public Art Fund. The total 2017 funding allocation of $150,000 is allocated as follows: $75,000 from 2016 GO bonds and $75,000 from 2017 GO bonds. This is for action.
Is there a second?
Second.
Alderman Suffredin, followed by Fleming. Did you want to let staff give her?
Chairman Braithwaite and Alderman and Director Stoneback, I do have two members of the Arts Council here who are well-versed and were part of the decision-making process for this, so they're also here to talk about it and answer questions.
Thank you. Did you want to ask your question, or?
Well, I was just going to ask, and I respect all the work that went into this, but is there any engineering reason why this can't be put off? If anybody from the staff can answer that. If this
Are you specifically regarding the installation of the art, or
Yeah,
what are you
do we
referring
have to do this year for some reason? Will there be an increased expense if we don't do it this year?
There will not. We had the electricity installed at the time that the work was done so that it would be there. The issue is more that by ordinance, the budget is set aside and the capital improvement funds are generally set aside for the year that they're to be expended in. So that's where the issue lies.
Okay. All right. Alderman Fleming?
Yeah, I have a easy question. So looking at it, what is our concern, or what do we do if it's yellow, as the picture looks like, it becomes an attraction for our lovely graffiti artists?
I'm going to defer to Co-Chairman Dina Robinson for that question, if that's all right.
Good evening, chairs. Thank you for having us here today. To answer your question in particular, my involvement with the Arts Council and the Public Art Committee over the last, I would say, 20 years, with any of our public installations with wall murals and other arts, we have not seen any significant increase in any type of graffiti work on artwork.
Okay. And then one more question to staff. So, and refresh my memory, what other improvements are we doing along the bridge? I can't remember if we're doing the cloth, are we painting it? I'm excited about the artwork, but then the bridge looks like crap. So what are you going to do?
You echo the same type of things that we're talking about at Arts Council. The viaduct itself is an entity, a structure that is beyond our physical control. We have to deal with the rail line that controls that. But that is something that we're in discussion with and we're working with and trying to figure out a solution for that. The walls itself, though, the current murals that are up there, they are being replaced with EMAP, the Evanston Mural Arts Program, but that's a separate project from this installation.
So the rendering, Director Stoneback, that we're looking at is not representative of what the final project is going to look like?
As far as the wall is concerned?
As far as the railroad is, as far as the infrastructure above the art?
Not for this year, no.
That's 3.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. So 3-point project, Alderman Braithwaite.
Alderman Braithwaite and members of the committee. There was a special council meeting in August of 2015, I believe, in which the city council approved a scrim design to put up over that bridge. That never went, based on wanting to see what the artwork below would look like and to make sure that we didn't put something up that would not match the artwork. But even more recently, the city has been talking to Union Pacific, and I think we're close to working out an agreement with them that would allow the city to paint the viaducts. And that would be at city's cost, but at least we would be allowed to do that, which is something that we had not been given permission to do in the past. So it is our intent and hope that as funding permits, we could paint the viaduct, and not just this one, but other Union Pacific viaducts throughout the city. We are close to working out that agreement, I believe.
That's great. When that agreement is solidified, will you bring it back to our attention?
Absolutely. We would need council approval to have the city manager execute that agreement.
Great. Seeing any more questions to this item?
I do like to say, just for the sake of the record, and for our panel, the community that's here, is that the funds that are set aside for this program are set aside by a city ordinance so that public art keeps up with development and the built environment. So I just want to make sure that's clear with the residents that are in attendance here, so they know where some of the money's coming from.
Okay. Thank you. Good job.
I'd like to add something. My name is Gay Riceborough, and I'm chairman of the Public Art Subcommittee on the Arts Council. Warren Langley is an internationally known artist. He has work in Australia, where he's from, Japan, New York, Tacoma, Washington, Shanghai, and Hong Kong. He's very well known. He's particularly interested in bringing light and interest to dark urban environments, and that underpass is certainly a dark urban environment. So I think this is a very exciting piece that would bring light, and yet it's not flashing lights, it's not going to be distracting to traffic. It's a very industrial looking site if you have ever walked under it, and I suggest that you do that. You'll find all kinds of X's and beams, and he is actually repeating some of that design in his proposal. It's a simple concept. I think it's very exciting. It'll be extremely durable. So I'm hoping very much that this goes ahead. And then I'm thrilled to learn that there is a possibility for painting that viaduct in the future. Thank you very much, Mr. Stonebuck.
All right. I'm sorry, Alderman Simmons.
I agree. I just want to agree. I think that it is exciting and it's thoughtful. It would be an inspiration to that area right there, which is dark and urban, as you said, and all the fuss about the new configuration of the streeting there would be inspiring to the community with the new development coming east of there, and I'm sure some will become west of there. It would be a welcome addition. I'm hoping that we can support it.
Thank you.
All right. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
What's that? 4-1.
Thank you so much, committee members and Chairman Braithwaite and Director Stoneback.
And thank you, and to members of your committee. Item A4, Alderman Fleming.
Resolution 65-R-17, creating a separate fund entitled the Robert Crown Community Center Maintenance Fund. Staff and Friends of Robert Crown, a 501c3, recommend the City Council adopt Resolution 65-R-17, enabling the creation of Robert Crown Community Center Maintenance Fund in the 2019 annual budget. The fund will be used for specific long-term infrastructure maintenance items at both the RCC and surrounding fields as identified. Revenue to support the anticipated long-term maintenance cost of RCCC shall come from operating revenues of the new facility and from donations. These revenues will be reviewed not less than once every 5 years to determine if the proper funding has been set aside for timely replacement of infrastructure. This is for action.
Is there a second?
Second.
Alderman Suffredin for the second. Any questions? Alderman Fleming.
Yes, I have a question. So I guess it's for you, Marty. So who exactly, can you give me more clarity about this 5-year review process? Who is actually going to be managing this fund?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Marty Lyons. This fund will be managed by the city. This is but it is a request to have a new process, meaning that for a new major facility to set up a maintenance process so that we do not end up with all of our facilities being behind in their maintenance. It's different, just to go, the reason that I'm saying it's still the city is that one might think that it would also be other agents. One of the reasons that we're doing this is that all of the donors have, all of the major donors have said, we want to donate, but we also want to make sure that it will last. And the major donor has said, we would like to make sure that there is a positive step taken by the council, the city, to say we will have a maintenance fund set aside for the facility. I think what's really important is we didn't go overboard. We didn't say that we will put enough money aside to maintain every single stitch of the Crown Center. That would be difficult to do. And the memo points out that at some future point for a total rehab, we would do bonds again. But that would be after the bonds that are currently contemplated would be retired. So we're not saying that this fund will turn this facility into, something that never, that never has a need unmet. But we are being responsible and setting aside dollars. We hope that equipment lasts longer than it should. But we will have funds available to maintain things on an as-needed basis rather than adding to the debt of the city. But the short answer is you do.
Thank you.
And we do have, if you have any questions, representatives of Friends of Robert Crown that have helped with raising just under $10 million are here this evening if you have any questions regarding that part of it. But they are aware of the program and the idea that in the future they will be, we hope to have them contributing to this fund and not have it just be operating funds from the new center.
Thank you. Seeing no further lights, all those in favor of passing item A4, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Alderman Rainey, item A5, please.
This is Resolution 66R17, a professional services agreement with James P. Moran Center for the 2017 Certificate of Rehabilitation Program in an amount not to exceed $30,000. This is for the purpose of providing legal services for not less than 15 Evanston residents to secure certificates of rehabilitation, expungement, and criminal record sealing. I move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions? Is there someone from staff here? Just a quick. So forgive me because I probably should have read the memo a little bit more carefully. So it's $2,000 a pop. Is this for a specific group and is this folding into a larger program? Because this is, I'm assuming, something that they would do anyway.
Lawrence Hemingway, Director of Parks, Rec, and Community Services. Mr. Chair and committee, we're asking for a continuation of an existing program. This will be year 5, and it is based upon individuals that we come across in the community on a as-needed basis. There are some folks who are already identified through our program who needs these services. But as we do our day-to-day work, we come across other individuals who need this assistance. And so this will allow us to refer those individuals to the Moran Center so that we could get them the assistance that they need.
Thank you. Alderman Rainey.
I'm sure you will remember better than I, but I believe the CD committee also supports this program.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do.
That's correct.
Yeah. Any other questions? Seeing none. Oh, Alderman Fleming.
Actually, can you clarify for me? I think that I remember this program also, they get an actual certification so that can take that out to the community and potentially get employment because they show that they have completed this program.
Yeah, that is correct, Alderman Fleming. The individuals who go through this are eligible. Not all clients end up with the certificate because they need a variation of services. Some just need the expungement, some need the sealing, but those who go through the entire process, which require more legal assistance, will end up with a certificate so that they could have something to show.
That's great. All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Seeing no further lights, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item A6, Alderman, who's it, Sufferton.
Resolution 64R17, authorizing the city manager to execute a TIF forgivable construction loan and development agreement with Harrington Brown LLC for proposed development at 100 and 128 Chicago Avenue.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. We have Speaker Sue Calder.
I'm Suzanne Calder. I live at 1509 Asbury Avenue, and I urge the council to remove A6 and A7 from the consent agenda because I think there's need for further clarification on several items. I applaud the developer, however, for developing an innovative project for this area, and I certainly is needed. But it appears that the city is moving to accommodate the developer's timing rather than our own timing for due diligence. Approximately a third of the cost of the project is coming from city funds, and so that is a concern that I have. I am not certain that this project has gone before the Plan Commission, but I know it has not been discussed at the Housing, Homeless, and Human Relations Commission, which is a concern since $1 million is coming from the Affordable Housing Fund. Also of a concern is that all the units will be at 80% of the affordable units will be at 80% of AMI and none at 50 or 60% of AMI as is required by the inclusionary housing ordinance. When these items were discussed at economic development, there were a number of concerns expressed, and they wanted staff to get back to them, and that was on issues of environment, the lack of an appraisal of the city property, density issues, and concern of the size of the contribution from the Affordable Housing Fund. So I urge you to take these off the consent agenda and send them back to committees for further discussion.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Yes, Alderman Rainey.
I think it would be more appropriate to let the developer and the people involved in the project make their presentation, so some of these questions can be not only answered, but that the presentation can be made because, of course, we've had the appraisal. We know, what that was, and et cetera.
And the developers here?
Yes,
Okay.
of course. The whole group is here.
Please.
And
so,
I
Alderman,
asked you at the beginning of the
yes, you
meeting.
did.
Yeah.
And so one of the questions that I would ask, please start making your way to the podium.
We always let them make a presentation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And is this presentation mirror the presentation that we received from at Economic Development, or is this with some updates?
With updates, and I really
questions?
appreciate the comments that you just made, because what we have done since the presentation to the Economic Development Committee was listen carefully to all the concerns that were raised. We went back to the drawing board on a couple of in a couple of manners that we would like to update you on, and are ready to proceed on that basis. So we have addressed a couple of the issues in terms of requests to build higher density to try to make it more efficient. That unfortunately did not solve the problem, so we've actually come back with around the same size of the project. The affordable housing funds, just a reminder, was that our initial proposal was to have a project that would comply with the inclusionary housing ordinance for affordable housing. We were asked, would we actually consider adding more affordable housing units to the project on site? We started off with the making it very clear that we are in favor of including affordable housing units on site. So when the city asked us would we be willing to add more affordable units through the Affordable Housing Fund? We did take that under consideration, and that is part of our proposal now as well. So that's the $1 million was the city's request of us to be able to use the funds from the city's Affordable Housing Fund for us to provide more affordable units at the property. And Paul, I don't know if you have the presentation that we can go through. Could we do that? It's just some.
We don't have the presentation loaded. Do you want the presentation loaded?
And meanwhile,
And I can go through it very quickly.
Are you asking?
I guess I would ask if it's,
So what
a few of us had the presentation earlier,
Right.
and given time, just give us the high level.
Yes,
and
so
focus on the areas
one
of
other
change.
Yes, so the changes, I would say the high level changes are, number one, the original proposal was for us to purchase the city owned lot for $1. And there was concern raised at the Economic Development Committee meeting about getting an appraisal done. An appraisal was done. Staff came back to us and said, would we consider purchasing that at the market value? And we have agreed to do that, and that is part of the proposal. This is just a reminder for everybody of the site. I'll flip through these quickly. The other thing was that the initial proposal also had a request. Staff had thought one possible means of funding for the project to assist us. And keep in mind that this is the whole idea behind this project is to attract. We have Lamanda Joy here with a nonprofit called the Peterson Garden Project, and the evolution of that is going to be what we're calling City Grange now, which will be the nation's first education-centric garden center and retail at the location. So that was really the driving force behind this. Adding the apartments as a way to try to make it economically feasible to bring this social enterprise to this site. So the other thing that we had in our initial proposal was to try to make the project economically feasible. There was a suggestion that funds from the city's economic development fund, initially of around $800,000, could be contributed. That was reduced to $500,000 from our proposal to the Economic Development Committee last month. We have subsequently eliminated that completely. So we've tried to address all of the concerns that came out of the Economic Development Committee in our most recent proposal here. So again, we think this will be taking just to go back to the current site, a long, underutilized, troubled, environmentally contaminated site. One of the lots is a city-owned lot. We will be putting that back onto the tax rolls. The other lot was officially on the tax rolls, but didn't always pay their taxes. So our plan is to create something that we think is quite special for the gateway to the city of Evanston. A great combination of a social enterprise with a garden center. We hope to be able to utilize and also work with Metra and UP for the embankment along there, which would be part of the nonprofit for demonstration gardens. There's a commitment on the part of Lamanda and her organization to specifically focus on hiring at-risk youth and veterans as part of the enterprise as well. And we think including the affordable housing units, and yes, at the 80% AMI, we think that having a brand new elevator building would be quite suitable for seniors at the affordable rents at 80% of AMI. Nearly 40% of the total units in our current proposal would be at that affordable level. So these were some of the plans that, when we were asked to look at potential higher density projects. That's not a discussion that usually happens with a developer coming to a municipality, but we understood the logic behind it. But in terms of the need to build underground parking, in terms of putting us into another construction class and do it in precast concrete, significantly increasing the construction cost was not something that did not turn out to be feasible for us. So we're back to our original proposal. But as you see here, comparing what we presented to the Economic Development Committee last month to where we are today, it's more than $500,000 less in the overall request for municipal assistance. So, did that address the questions?
Alderman Sufferton?
Are you still looking for 38% of this to be funded by the city of Evanston?
No.
What?
No, the approximate project cost is about $7.9 million, and really the main source of municipal funding is through the TIF of $1.9 million. We were asked to consider using $1 million from the city's affordable housing fund if we would agree to add an additional 4 units of affordable housing. So the real math, I think, to look at this is that, the nature of a TIF is that currently the city's not generating tax revenue from this at all. We hope to create something that will put it back on the tax rolls, generate taxes, and then be within the Howard Ridge TIF district, and the $1.9 million is the TIF request.
Okay. Our materials here say that of a total project cost of $7.8 million, you're seeking $2.9 in public. Is that?
It's so the two pieces of the 1.9 TIF, and then the $1 million of affordable housing funds, which was a request from the city to us. Would we be willing to increase the number of affordable units paid for from the city's affordable fund, which most developers are paying into the fund rather than having to provide affordable units on site? We like to look at affordable housing differently and actually provide it on site in a mixed project. So we don't think it's accurate to view that as a subsidy to the project. We think we're looking at this as a way for the city to actually accommodate the goals of the Affordable Housing Fund and actually find more units that would be suitable for people in a new building, elevator building, in a vibrant location.
Okay.
Alderman Fleming?
So I have a question. Could you build I think you have 4 units that you would look at building, and then, or maybe you would do 5 affordable housing units, and then the $1 million would provide an additional 4. Would you move forward without providing the additional 4 and the extra $1 million and just do the?
Again, we could look at that. I thought that was kind of a nice part of the proposal for the city suggesting to us that there's a need for affordable housing in the city of Evanston. There are a number of developments that have paid into the fund, and it seemed to be a challenge that the city was having in actually finding the units for residents, and so we expressed a willingness to do that, and we think it's a good part of the proposal.
Alderman Rainey?
One of the most interesting things about this project is the controversy that has been raised about developers actually putting affordable units in their building. The most interesting thing of all, who would have thunk it? Interesting also is by accepting the city's offer to put 4 additional units, affordable units, in this project, the developer is now required to put 5 of his own affordable units. If he only had the 20 units, he would only be required to have 4 affordable units. But with the addition of the city's request to add 4 affordable units, the math now works out that he is required to add 5 units. So that's interesting.
Or the option to pay money into the fund.
Or to pay money. So I'm thinking it would just be silly for any future developer to even give any thought whatsoever to put units in his building. I mean, just silly, because now we're finding out that if you're going to put affordable units in your building, you now have to go to, and this is a first for me, to the Housing and Homeless Committee to get reviewed. I never heard of that. And I think that's interesting, because I think any developer who's not going to put units in their building ought to be sent to the Housing and Homeless Committee to be vetted as to why he's not doing that or she's not doing that. That's really interesting. I'm now hearing, and this is, I don't want to get angry about this, but I think it's really unfortunate. I'm starting to hear a tension between the affordable housing people, those who want the very poor, who have absolutely no source of income, who need a 20%, 40%, a 60%. There's going to be a tension. There are all sorts of people who need affordable housing. There are people with 6 kids who have a decent job who need affordable housing. There are single seniors, for example, moi, who, I make like $16,000 a year. I need affordable housing. There are people who are making $40,000 a year who are single. It is hard in the city of Evanston. We read about it every day that need affordable housing. This could really help this kind of property. Not everybody needs a 3-bedroom, $1,200 a month affordable unit. Not everybody. Some people need something 80%, they're single. Some people need 80%, they're a couple, a mother and a kid. Not everybody needs to go before the Housing and Homeless Committee that are going to put affordable housing in their unit. This is not in any plan, any place in the city of Evanston. This project is not even going to put a shovel in the ground for probably a year and a half. I don't know. Maybe hopefully a little sooner. So one of the things I explained to people when I took them to this property is the money for affordable housing is going to come out, if we pass this, is going to come out of the promises made, of the commitments made by developers who have been approved, who've been before the Plan Commission, who've been before DAPR, who've been before the council, who have an obligation because they've said, we don't want affordable housing in our building. And one of those took them 2 years to get approval is 831 Emerson. Their requirement, it's all etched in stone. It is an ordinance. It is law. They are required to pay into the Affordable Housing Fund $2.4 million. This is the fund, the money in the fund that this project intends to draw from. All we're saying tonight is that money is identified to be the money from which the affordable units that the city of Evanston is going to purchase, where that money's coming from. That was a complicated sentence. That's where it's going to come from. He's not going to get a check written the day the Plan Commission and the Zoning Board of Appeals says, okay, this is an okay property, go do some construction drawings to get a construction permit. That's not, this is going to take for the 831 Emerson to build their building and get a temporary occupancy. That's when that money is going to have to be deposited into the Affordable Housing Fund. This is going to happen tomorrow. This money isn't going to be, the only money that he's going to start drawing down once he starts building is the $1.9 million. But for the TIF, this building would never be built. We drew these lines for this TIF down Chicago Avenue saying, and I was sitting at the table when it happened, and this was how many years ago now? Over 10 years ago. God, do you think anything will ever be built down Chicago Avenue? No, we don't. But let's put the boundary down Chicago Avenue to that gas station. Maybe by the grace of God or Allah or somebody, there will be somebody who will come along. And sure enough, after all these years, out of nowhere, I had nothing to do with them coming. The only thing I had to do was keeping this place vacant of midnight auto repair. Along came this developer and his partner, to bring this project. We're sitting at a table, and he says, oh, I insist on putting affordable housing in my building. That's how I do business. And our staff said to him, what? Would you repeat that? Nobody else wants to do that. And then our staff said, would you put more? And he said, well, what did you have in mind? And they said, well, how about $1 million and you'll put more housing in there? And he said, okay. And that's how we got to this point. That people will look at this and say, oh, 1.9 million from the TIF, that's too much. That money cannot be used to satisfy any problem that we have in our budget. It can't be used anyplace except from the corner of Ridge and Howard to the corner of Chicago and Howard. That's the only place that money can be used. You can't use it anyplace else. And you know what? There's not one other project in that district that needs any money at this time, or I don't think anymore. This is the last spot, the last spot. So I'm just saying there's going to be $1.4 million left over, and probably between now and the time this project gets off the ground, we might even be able to commit more of that $1.4 million to some other project. But I will remind you, a few weeks ago, we committed $500,000 plus to a not-for-profit to buy 2 units of housing that they hadn't even identified. And I want you to know that when there's not a not-for-profit who owns any housing in this town or any other place that isn't struggling to maintain it, there's not a not-for-profit who owns housing any place in the United States that isn't constantly dependent on infusions of public money in order to maintain it. Not one. It's a struggle morning, noon, and night to maintain not-for-profit affordable housing. You get a couple of private developers who are willing to take affordable housing into their units, and you're going to have decent housing for the long term. And that's what we're looking for here. This is the best deal you'll ever get on this corner or any other corner. We're lucky to have them, and I plead with you, let this go to council, vote for it. You'll never be sorry. I've heard all sorts of stories that this is a huge, risky project. This is not a risky project at all. If this man sells this building within the next few years, and he has indicated there's no chance of that happening, all that money's got to be paid back unless he sells it to his mother. It all has to be paid back. It's written in the law.
Sorry.
He has to pay it back. I mean, so we've got that. We made that mistake once. We'll never make that mistake again. We won't make the mistakes that we have made in the last few years with some of our deals. We've learned from them. So let's show this city that we actually mean what we say when we say we like affordable housing. But that's not what all this is about. This is about showing the people over on Dempster and Hartree that you can mix it up with affordable housing. That affordable housing is just like regular housing. It's like regular housing. Like you can have a cafe in affordable housing. You can have retail. You can have parking. You can have gardens. You can have affordable housing next door to a Jewel, next door to a Marshall's. You can have affordable housing next door to Clyde. On Clyde Avenue, which is the next street over, you have property values that have plummeted. You have people underwater because they bought their property when things were really great. I think this building, this project is going to do nothing but enhance those properties. That's what's going to happen. Because when you drive over to look at a unit on Clyde, you go by this mess. It's a horrible mess. You used to live there.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, you don't live there anymore, so you don't even know. But it's horrible. It's horrible. So, I mean, there's so many components to this project. And for those of you who don't live near there, it's easy for you to say, this project is a joke. I really feel for your blight, or I get your blight. It's too much money. You know, I feel for your lack of compassion. That's what I feel. And, you know, just think about the little people in this town who live on the south end, who have struggled. I have only asked this council for 4 things in 30 years. 4 things. I asked you for 415 Howard. I asked you for Ward 8. I asked you for Peckish Pig and the theater. Now I'm asking you for number 5, and I'm not going to ask you for anything. That's not bad.
No.
Now, some people have wards where they don't have to ask for anything because it just comes to them. You know, I have to drag people kicking and screaming, you know, into the 8th ward. And, you know, I mean, just think, the very first thing that happened in the 8th ward, Peter, was your condo building on Clyde. It was a monumental event where there was the first affordable condo building. Yep. It was a fabulous thing. So I'm asking you to remember what it was like in the 8th ward then, and remember the people that are still there and support this project.
Thank you. Just a quick comment. So, you know, you have me on the fence after the long conversation, and I was having a real difficult time, and I'm sure other members of council just looking at the high percentage of the subsidy. I'm going to be honest. But I think by adding the additional housing, I think last time we looked at this, it was somewhere around $250,000 per unit, and it brings it down to 100 and maybe 10 or 11. If
No, from the Affordable Housing Fund
correctly.
is $1 million for 4 units. So it is $250,000. It is still $250,000 per unit, which was what the initial proposal was.
Correct, but if you're adding...
But it forces you into another affordable unit on your end. So
Right.
I think we need to look at that.
Again, the proposal is 24 apartment units, and of those, 9 or nearly 40% being affordable units. And, you know, again, the one thing, I appreciate the comments there. It's consistent with the type of projects that I do try to do. My background is in public policy and housing and community development, and the reason this project is important and other projects have been like this have been important to me is for one of the things that Alderman Rainey just said is to try to do this in a public-private partnership that is in a sustainable way and can show that it can be done. And there are a lot of different ways to do it. And then the only other thing that was lost in the conversation here tonight, at the Economic Development Committee meeting, it was all about LaManda Joy and this wonderful creation and vision that she has for this project in terms of really bringing economic development to this corner, which would, again, be something incredibly special. I didn't find this property on my own. LaManda, through her vision that she's been working at for a number of years, we got to know each other on another property that I owned in the city of Chicago, had no plans to develop it for a number of years, brought her nonprofit in to do the first organic community garden. It's at Montrose at the Brown Line station. That's how I got to know LaManda and her organization. So she called me and said she has this wonderful idea and found this site, I think through an initial conversation with other staff in the city. And I said, that's the kind of thing I would love to work with you on and to try to find a way to do it. So really what I'm bringing to LaManda's vision is really trying to pull the pieces together to make this work. So
If I want to ask my question again, because at economic development, it wasn't the package, it's the sticker price is what has my antennas up. And so if I'm doing the math again, I'll ask again quickly.
Okay, sure.
We're at 4 units at $250,000. That was where we were at economic development.
That it.
I'm now trying to help to understand by dividing the math by 9 units, that then reduces the cost. Am I tracking the math properly? Because that then
I think there's some confusion there. So
you want me to finish, or do you want?
Yep, sure, go ahead.
So for me, that then spreads the $1 million over 9 units, reducing the cost per unit. So I don't have in my head citywide what we spend per affordable housing units. And as we tackle, because this project is tackling a big issue that we have, and that's finding units versus just paying into the fund. So I want to find a way for it to make sense, not only to me, but that's got to translate to the taxpayers, right?
Correct.
So by adding the 9, you're reducing the dollar amount per unit to about 110, 111. Help me to understand.
So that is I think that's okay to look at it that way, or
Okay.
but that was included in the initial proposal as well. So the first
You want
5
to
units
adjust
were our obligation as
Right,
part of the
under
inclusionary housing ordinance. So that was the first 5. The additional 4 was with the $1 million from the housing fund. And we're-
And then we have 2 other questions as well.
Alderman Braithwaite, to your question, I think what you should include there is, if they didn't do the units, there would be, to Alderman Rainey's point, a $400,000 contribution into the Affordable Housing Fund. So the units have to happen in some way, shape, or form, either a payment or a unit. So your math is still, it would be a 1.4 million is what's in play. $400,000 coming in, or $1 million coming out, and 9 units in play. So I would look at it as the 1.4 million into the 9, and that's still, from what we've heard over the last year when we've talked about any of these units, our price tag is always $250 or somewhere around there for these units. So you are still, your math is still not bad. I would just add in the 400,000 because that's the opportunity cost that we're foregoing if we don't do any units.
Okay. Alderman Suffredin, followed by Alderman Simmons.
I just want to say I admire your sincerity and what you're trying to do. Alderman Rainey, I admire your zealous representation of what you believe to be your constituents' interests, and I'm sorry that I'm going to vote no.
Alderman Simmons.
You are everything that I think we are looking for. And as it was proposed, it made a lot of sense. And somewhere we complicated it by offering or suggesting that we have $1 million to give of money that's incoming. And we, as a council, talked about strategically looking at ways to best use those funds. Also including opportunities for home ownership and expanding affordable housing citywide. So it's a brilliant plan. I told you at Economic Development that excited, especially about the collaboration, the partnership with the gardens. But it seems unfair to put your schedule in our lap as urgency to make a decision. I have some questions about 415 Howard. So are there any affordable units in that building? I know that we participated there. I understand that it does take Section 8 vouchers. How much are we paying in rebate from the taxes that they pay? Just trying to understand our total investment in that corridor for housing.
And while Marty's making his way up here, could I address your other question about timing?
Sure.
So this is something that we have been working at for probably 7 or 8 months, working very closely with staff over that period of time. We did manage to get under contract the 128 to 130 property, which is north of the city parking lot, under contract in January. We have extended that contract one time, and now we're not able to extend it any further. So this has been a process, and like any process, you're up against some deadlines. So.
Right. It just seems that for it to be brought to introduction sooner would have made sense, because when I first heard it at Economic Development, it was for $130,000 or something or another, and in the packet was the total dollar amount that was going to be requested of like $3.6 million. So that's what pretty much took me off guard and had me concerned about the total investment from the city. So I would like us to have more time to discuss this. We have other opportunities to support affordable housing initiatives. We have residents here in town, one in particular that owns 27 units, more than half of them she makes available for affordable housing. We haven't supported her in any way in her building, so I would like us to be able to discuss that before we exhaust such a substantial amount of our affordable housing funds.
Right. Okay. And one last thing, just to draw attention to this comparison from where we were with the economic development. Again, our current proposal is for over $500,000 less in total assistance from the city.
Alderman Rainey.
Just to answer your question, first, I could provide the schedule that just says what the percentage is for 415 Howard, what that was. In approximately 2012, they became fully occupied, and that or 90% occupied, and that triggered our payment of 100% of the property taxes that they pay to everyone. So for 5 to 6 years, and I'll get the schedule, they paid 100%. And this year, this coming year, or actually the year we're in, we only have to pay them back 85% of their taxes. Next year 70, next year 55. So if you go to, I believe it's page 292 of the packet, it shows the step down of the 415 Howard payments coming out of the TIF. If that step down wasn't happening, the math wouldn't work at all for the project. But it was I can give you a number between now and council of what the projected total payment for 415 Howard would be.
Thank you. Also, could you give us a number on what the demand is? Has staff taken an inventory of the demand for affordable housing, whether it's 80%, 60%? Where is the greatest need right now?
That I could not do. We would not have that as far as what the demand is. I would talk with Sarah Flax, would talk with others, but I'm sorry, that would not something I have.
And the garden center is a for-profit business?
Yeah. So quick question, and Marty, don't go anywhere. Sorry about your foot. So let's talk a little bit about the site being contaminated.
Sure.
And I can't remember if I asked this at Economic Development. Have you done a phase 1, phase 2? Are there any surprises that you can predict that would throw off the cost of your project at this point?
So yes, we have done phase 1 and phase 2 of both lots. The privately owned lot to the north of the city parking lot, and then with the city's permission, we used the same environmental consultant to do a phase 1 and a phase 2 borings in the city lot. So the lot to the north, as you know, was a gas station, and they went through the process already of having the underground storage tanks removed.
Okay.
So that has already been taken place of that one. There's still some additional work to be done as part of this development on that lot. With respect to the city's lot, the environmental consultant's best estimate is that there are 4 underground storage tanks underneath the ground at the city lot. They provided us with an estimate of what the total cost would be, and so our plan would be to remove those tanks, remove any contaminated soil, and bring it up to the standards for residential and for the garden center.
Okay, thank you. And I think Alderman Rainey touched on this, and I'll ask Marty. So let's say he decides to flip this in a year to 2 years. Is there something written in the packet that I missed that would address that based on the large number of subsidy that's being requested for this project?
And I will defer to Mr. Zalmazak as to where it is, but yes, that was discussed. Just because with 415 Howard, it's been sold twice. At a profit each time,
right?
And the new owners, they pay more taxes, but they get a bigger rebate. It's turned out good for the TIF overall and long term.
Sure.
But as Alderman Rainey pointed out, we wanted to have protection. He's going to look for the detailed issue, or we could talk to Ms. Mason.
Alderman Rainey, do you have just a summary?
I don't have the page right in front of me, but
No worries.
it's very clear in there that if it's sold to anybody other than an immediate relative, that in other words, if you transfer it to your wife or someone, it is immediately paid back.
Okay, thank
the
you.
remaining loan.
Okay.
Page 256. Thank you, sir.
Okay, I'll read that. Any more questions, just paying attention to the time? Seeing no lights. Alderman Rainey, did you want to say something before we call the question?
Well, I want to, about 415 Howard, I'm not sure the connection here, but 415 Howard, that was built on a lot that had never had anything on it for over 100 years. And it, housed 221 people and families and was a very desirable property. And I do believe at the time our staff made some mistakes in doing the math and the deal. But it wouldn't have been built either without the TIF. And, in the long run, it's going to be very helpful. But it has no affordable housing in it. And back then, it just wasn't an issue. We had more affordable housing in the 8th Ward probably than any other place at the time, and more Section 8 vouchers in the 8th Ward at the time. And that just sort of provided a balance, and probably had more city employees living in it at the time than when it was first built. So, yeah, it didn't. And
Thank you.
it's definitely transit-oriented.
Thank you, Alderman Rainey. Alderman Fleming.
So I just want to, tell you my concerns, Mr. Brown, so that you are not unaware. So as Alderman Ruth Simmons said, there's a factor of time, which I understand you're up against the clock with the purchase of the lot, which I would definitely support because I, would like that facility cleaned up. However, I know for you as a developer, it doesn't make sense to buy the lot if you're not going to move forward with the building. I think what I want to just say publicly is that my concerns, again, like Alderman Ruth Simmons, is that we talked earlier this year about what to do with our affordable housing fund. And I will say, new to the council, I've watched, and it's been a lot of conversation and not necessarily a lot of what the community might see as action. So this would get us there. However, we don't have a lot of time to digest this, right? So if you were just come in and say, I'm going to buy the lot, I think that's kind of a no-brainer for us, but it's also the lot, and then I need this money, and then there's this part in here about, later on, we're going to be seeing a CDBG loan from you, and then there is a tax rebate, and so there's a lot for us to digest, and unfortunately, I think our staff might have been a little hopeful, right, that we were going to be a fast decision-making body, which I have not seen us be yet. So it's unfortunate. I want to just extend my personal, I understand this might be frustrating, but this is a lot for us to consider. It's a lot of money for us to give in only a short period of time, and it's unfortunate that you don't have a lot of time to give. I do appreciate that you have made some adjustments. I am not on economic development, so I didn't see the first presentation, so I can appreciate that. I do appreciate the affordable housing that you would put in there. I would be more inclined to support this if we were not giving you the $1 million, not because you're not a good person, but I do think that there are other places in the city that we might be able to, I don't know if we can get more bang for our buck elsewhere, and we haven't really, as a council, determined that, and so I think it's irresponsible for us to just move forward with you. I'll be more than happy to have you put the units in, if that's what you decided to do, without our $1 million contribution, but I think that we just have to be better stewards of taxpayer money to make sure we've done our due diligence around the city to see if there's a way we can provide more affordable housing. But I just wanted to personally let you know it's not a reflection on you as a developer. I'm not worried about you selling it next year and running out of town, but I feel a huge responsibility to make sure that I'm utilizing taxpayer monies in the way that's really best.
Understood. Can I comment on that?
Sure.
Yeah. You used the word hopeful. That's what we've had. You've used that word throughout the last 7 months here. We're hopeful that we can make the numbers work. We're hopeful that we can pull this together. You can't solve all the world's problems with one small project, but we feel like we put something together that has a wonderful social enterprise, which would be a tremendous addition to the city of Evanston. We're trying to be a developer who says yes to including affordable housing because it's important, as opposed to being forced to pay into a fund or being forced to provide affordable housing. So again, I try to work on projects that check a lot of boxes and try to do it in a way that hopefully can show other people that it can be done in a public-private partnership. we've given this our best shot. We are up against some tight time frame here. I've personally invested a lot of money over the last 7 months to get to this point, knowing full well that it may or may not happen. So I think we have a wonderful project. It's been fun working with Lamanda to get to this point. And I, with my background in public policy and housing and community development, again, wanted to present something that would be easy for, would be easy to approve. So we hope that you would take that into consideration.
Okay. Well,
Thank you.
Again, thank you very much for your presentation. It's very important.
I had my light on.
I didn't. Oh, my apologies. Alderman Rainey.
Well, I'm a little surprised at Alderman Simmons, because we talked, and your concern was that we were going to deplete the Affordable Housing Fund, and I said that I didn't believe that was going to happen, and I determined that this money was not going to be necessary for quite a while, and that it would simply be a commitment from the money coming from the 831 project, leaving, leaving just only considering that $1.4 million left, plus whatever money is currently in the program. The person that you mentioned needs that support now, and we've been trying to give it to her now. And I don't think this project is going to do anything to impose upon her. And so I am very surprised that my understanding was that you had no problem with the TIF, and if you could be assured that this project was not going to deplete the fund, that you would be okay with it. And so I'm disheartened.
So none of that changes. I don't have any problem with the TIF. I do have a problem with the amount of money coming from affordable housing without any strategic planning. I understand that she's there. I don't know how much we've done to help her. Since I've been on council, I haven't seen it. And I would like to know what we are willing to do and what we will make available to her and others like her.
We're going to have close to $2 million left over, and I think we can help her with that. But if you're not going to vote for it, you're not going to vote for it. But it seems to me that we're about to leave on the table an opportunity. And I just, I'm going to insist that this go to the council so that we can continue the discussion there. And maybe by then you'll change your mind. But this, this is a project that's also going to provide 10 jobs in addition to the construction jobs that are going to take place as it's being built, but 10 jobs for 10 real jobs that are going to pay real money for people. And this conversation about, money from CDBG and tax, that has nothing to do with the project we're being asked to approve tonight. That has to do with down the line, once the business gets started. So don't mix apples and oranges. And, you're going to lose out, for the new alderman, you're going to lose out on projects if you're going to drag your feet and miss opportunities like this. You will never see another project like this. You really, how many have we seen like this? None. Very few. You see high rises, maybe, I don't know, I just have never seen one. Maybe Sherman Plaza, where there's all the retail on the first floor and beautiful housing on the second floor. I don't know. But this is really a very, very unique, complicated project. And I hope between now and the council meeting, you'll give some thought to this, really. Give some thought to it. It's not a joke, and it's not, it's not something that should be dismissed.
Alderman Simmons.
It's not a joke. It's not being dismissed. We do have to give it some serious consideration. I do not want to lose this opportunity either. I want to go on record of saying that it is a great opportunity. I just want to make sure that we've thought it through, that we discuss it with our colleagues, and we're consistent with the goals that we've all talked about amongst us.
All right. So keeping,
We must not forget the goal of providing affordable housing and a built environment, which we are forgetting about. We're forgetting about cleaning up the environment. We're forgetting about, we just talked earlier about the intersection with the mural and the public art, et cetera, about how important that was. And I'm sitting here thinking, yeah, what about the entrance to the city? When's anybody going to do anything about that? And then I thought, oh, well, we'll get to talk about that. And here we are talking about it, and we're leaving that horrible mess when we have an opportunity. But
all right. So I'm going to pay attention to the time and the remaining agenda items, I think. Yes. Seeing no further lights, we'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
All right. You're a no.
Yeah.
Aye. So for discussion, is there any recommendations? If not, we'll just move it straight along. Moving it straight along. So we're five. I'm sorry. I don't have that in front of me. So it moves it on to council 4 to 1.
No,
Oh,
one.
she switched. We're just moving it for discussion. All right. Thank you all very much. All right.
Alderman Fleming, switch.
Do you want us to do it again? Are you good? All right. Thank you. All right. Let's keep moving. We have item A7. I think that's Alderman Simmons.
Oh. I'm sorry. Thank you.
No.
A7. Ordinance 67017, authorizing city manager to negotiate with Harrington Brown LLC for the sale of city-owned real property located at 100 Chicago Avenue. Staff recommends approval of ordinance 67017, authorizing the city manager to negotiate with Harrington Brown LLC for the sale of city-owned real property located at 100 Chicago Avenue. The sale of city-owned property is a two-step process. An ordinance must be adopted to authorize the city manager to negotiate the sale of property, followed by an ordinance at a later date that authorizes the city manager to execute a sales contract that memorializes said negotiations. A 2/3 majority of city council is required to adopt ordinance 67017. This is for introduction. This is for introduction and action.
Okay. Alderman Rainey. I understand the two are packaged together. Gotcha. Seeing no further lights, all those in favor of, and this is for suspension of the rules, action and introduction and action. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Motion carried. Oh, pardon me. It was moved. Is there a second? Second by Alderman Fleming. We'll call the vote again. All those in favor of passing item A7 on to council, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
All right, 4-1. Thank you. Alderman Fleming, item A8.
Ordinance 73-0-17, amending Title 10, Motor Vehicle and Traffic, Chapter 11, Traffic Schedule, Section 17. Schedule, what is that, 617, parking violation penalties. Staff recommends the City Council adopt this ordinance, amending City Code Section 101117, parking violation penalties to increase for expired parking meter by $10 to $20 effective September 1st, 2017. For action. I'm sorry, for introduction.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Is there a second? Seeing none, I guess it fails. All right, next item, A9.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman,
Yep.
I move that we remove ordinance 73017 from our agenda.
I'll second that. All those in favor of removing item A8, ordinance 73-0-17, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There you have it. It's gone. Thank you, Alderman Rainey. Item A9, who's got that? Alderman Sufferton?
That's,
Oh, my
that's the one we
apologies.
just,
A9.
Is that mine?
Yep.
So we got rid of A8,
is,
A9.
Ordinance 76017, amending the City of Evanston Code 101117 parking violation penalties to increase the fine for street cleaning parking violations by $15 to $50.
Is there a second?
I didn't move approval.
Oh, you have to move it. I would prefer that you move it.
All right, if I have to, I'll move approval.
Seeing no lights, no second.
I move we remove it from the agenda.
Is there a second?
second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to move item A9, ordinance 76-0-17. All those in favor of removing, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous also. It's gone. Item A10, Alderman Sufferton.
Ordinance 69017 amends Title 10, creates a residential parking district for the residents on Lakeshore Boulevard on the west side from Greenleaf north of Hamilton and 1145 Sheridan Road.
Is there a second? Seeing none, would you like to propose?
I think this isn't one of the.
Second.
Okay. Just check. We're at a different kind of, on a whole different kind of vibe. All right, it's been properly moved and seconded. Alderman Fleming, followed by Alderman Rainey.
So I have a question. I was just looking at my map here, whatever staff is here. Can you tell me, is this, we are going to limit this parking all day, or is it limited overnight? I'm looking, and this is near the beach, and I have concerns that we already have a lot of restrictions on our beach parking.
Good evening, Rick Voss, Fleet Manager. Alderman Fleming, no, this is strictly to allow the people that live on the west side of Lakeshore between Lee and, or not Lee, but between Greenleaf and Hamilton, the access to the district which is bordering their resident. They have no parking at all on the west side at any time. So it does not affect the lakefront. It does not create an ordinance on Lakeshore. It allows them into the district on Hamilton, on Greenleaf. It allows them to also enjoy entry into the district. That's all it does. It does not remove any parking, doesn't take any other restrictions, and it's just strictly allowing them to go into the H district when needed. They have no additional parking.
What does that mean, they are allowed in the H district?
The H district borders, it's on Hamilton, and then it goes up a little bit farther north towards Dempster, and it allows them to go into that district if they have guests or they get residential passes, or if for some reason they can't get into their own houses by driveways or whatever, at least allows them someplace to park because of the restrictions at the lakefront during the year, because it allows them no parking. There's no parking on the west side in that whole block. So then they have to try to follow the rules that are imposed on the lakeside, which is the east side of the street, and then after certain hours, they can't even park there. So it just allows them, I think it affects 5 or 6 houses, and that's it.
All right, thank you.
Alderman Rainey.
Okay. My light was on accidentally.
Okay. Seeing no further lights, all those in favor of passing item A10, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oh, pardon me. Thank you for introduction. Passes. Item A11. Who's got that? Sufferton?
Me? Yeah. Okay. Ordinance 70017, amending Title 10, Motor Vehicles and Traffic, Chapter 11, Traffic Schedules, Section 18, Residence Parking Only Districts. The Transportation Parking Committee and staff recommends that the City Council adopt Ordinance 70017, amending of the City Code, Section 101118, adding residence parking only on Harrison Street, both sides, Hartree Avenue, to the alley east of Prairie Avenue and Prairie Avenue, both sides, alley south of Central Street to Lincoln Street, to read 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. Monday through Saturday. This is for introduction.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Seeing no lights, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Item A12 is an ordinance 71-0-17, amending Title 10, Motor Vehicles and Traffic, Chapter 11, Traffic Schedules, Section 18, Residence Parking Only Districts, and that's for introduction. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Seeing no further lights, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We are at item A13, Alderman Fleming.
Ordinance 72-0-17 to amend Title 11, Administrative Adjudication, Chapter 2, Parking and Compliance Violations, Section 11B, Immobilization Program. Parking and Transportation Committee and staff recommend council adopt this ordinance, amending Title 11, Administrative Adjudication, Chapter 2, Parking and Compliance Violations, Section 11B, for the immobilization program to read, when the registered owner of a vehicle has accumulated 3 or more final determinations of parking and or compliance violation liability. This is for introduction.
Seeing no seconds, the motion fails. Is there a second amendment?
Remove from the agenda.
You want to move that?
Remove.
It's been properly moved to remove item A13, ordinance 72-17. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Seeing no further lights, or Alderman Rainey, would you like to speak to it?
Yes.
Thank you.
I wouldn't like to speak, should we vote on that? And then I would like to speak.
Do you want to speak before we vote?
No, after, because I have a new thing.
Perfect. All those in favor of removing item A13, ordinance 72-0-17, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Alderman Rainey.
I suggested earlier that we do an amnesty program.
Right.
And I got some feedback from our staff, and the feedback was, we did this once before, and it didn't work very well. And I read the way we did it, and I think I saw a lot of problems with the way we did the amnesty program, and I can see why it didn't work very well. So I would like us at our next meeting to discuss an amnesty program for everybody who has 3 or more tickets, and make it very clear that after the amnesty program, or set a date, that at that point we might discuss going to 3 tickets for the boot, because that might provoke people to come in and pay their tickets.
Sure.
And to give them a great, huge break on any late fees that they have, so that we have $2 million. I mean, how can we talk about our budget having a problem when we have, I found out it's not just $2 million, it's $2 to $5 million owing us in outstanding traffic fines, parking tickets. That's outrageous. And I found the reason we don't send our outstanding tickets to collections and da-da-da. Well, and we're talking about nickel and diming people for $200,000.
Right.
Over close to $5 million in outstanding fines.
Right.
Shame on us.
Yeah.
So let's talk about something to get people to pay.
So, Mr. Voss, I think that's I don't know if that falls on your lap. Nope,
Next
you're shaking.
meeting.
But I think that Alderman Rainey, to whomever,
Our finance department.
where's Marty? Did he leave, or the city manager? So whomever's listening, I think that's excellent. And I would just say to members of the press, I didn't keep track of the items. Item A8, A9, I just want to compliment members of the committee. That wasn't pre-organized. I think it's just clear that I hope that everyone picks up, that we understand during a tough budget season that we have to be very creative when it comes to finding revenue to offset our expenses. But I think for myself and other members of the committee, it isn't going to be at the expense of residents and nickel and diming, particularly with looking at our parking. So I just want to acknowledge the committee for that decision, and hopefully we will take up Alderman Rainey's suggestion for the amnesty program and look at a way of collecting that extra $2 million. We have 1, 2, 3 items for discussion. The first is
Alderman Braithwaite, before you list those off, can I make a request that we do APW 3 first? Is that possible? I know that there is a couple speakers here, one who's already had to leave because of timing.
If,
Or
with
is that not possible?
respect, I had someone approach me who has his kid here for item APW1. I think
Okay.
that will be a faster discussion. Are you all right with it?
That's fine.
Okay, thank you very much.
Just
AP1, Municipal Solid Waste Franchise.
Good evening. Frank Hilligans with Groot Recycling and Waste Services. Director Stonebeck had asked to have me come and give a brief synopsis. There's some direction given to myself and to Groot Industries, along with city staff, to identify commercial businesses. As we know, Groot Industries is the exclusive hauler of the commercial franchise garbage collection contract here in Evanston, along with the residential at the time. This is just speaking toward the commercial waste hauling agreement. There's been some discussion between the city and Groot as far as methods and means to identify commercial stops that are potentially not subscribing to enough service to properly have their waste collected. And we were asked, and I said we could do it because we have new technology on our trucks now that allows us to take pictures from the truck to the site. Each truck that Groot Industries now has four cameras on it, front, rear, driver cameras, for safety and for giving us better service to our customers and to the city of Evanston. I put together just 4 slides of some examples of what we've done. Mr. Stonebeck can chime in if there's anything I'm missing out on, but I will show you these 4 locations. I randomly picked them as examples of what we've done. It can be difficult. It makes our drivers kind of like the garbage police. It's kind of hard to do sometimes. Sometimes, some businesses will just have extra, only once every 5 months. Not a real big deal, but we're looking for those stops that continually have overflowing garbage that need extra service. And then we appreciate the partnership we have with the city of Evanston, because once we have identified those, if they're not cooperative to our salesmen, then we can go to the city and have them, at least we can have a dialogue with the city to say, what can we do? And we really haven't gotten that point. I got one picture of one location just randomly selected.
And before you get into that, just to members of the committee, so this conversation started, Alderman Rainey, I think last year sometime, where we were looking at a large number of missed trash pickups in both the 2nd, 5th, and 8th Ward, to members of the committee. And so we met with this gentleman, and we looked at the residential, and we were trying to figure out what we can do. So Groot, they go around, they take pictures of the residents, which is nice because they all have addresses, or supposed to have addresses, and then that was our way to minimize the number of missed trash. So in doing so, he identified that there were a number of businesses and also large residential, similar to what Alderman Rainey's been dealing with in the 8th Ward. So this is what we're getting ready to see. And what we suggested is, if there's a way to notify the alderman what you're going to see, who those businesses are, if I know that they're in our ward, that we will work with our city staff and group to make sure that we don't have this ongoing project, just to put it in proper framework. Thank you.
I'll like this button here. Hopefully, I think this is, or can we fast forward to the next slide? I don't know if this button, am I supposed to?
Do you have to point it?
Oh, there it is. Okay. This is one location we picked, Church Street Plaza, and these are random. I'm not picking on any commercial business. They're all valued customers. I'm just showing examples of what our drivers identified. This location, back in April 3rd, driver recorded pictures of overflowing garbage containers. Customer was contacted via email regarding increasing service. We do have a designated customer service rep for the Evanston commercial franchise. And once we addressed it, the driver addresses it to us, operations gives us the picture, we give it to the sales rep who's out here. There was a resolve to it. The customer agreed to increase the service from 4 times a week to 5 times per week. And now we've seen no overflowing garbage at all. That extra pickup was needed. And most customers we address, didn't realize it, or I've seen some extra charges on my invoice. I can save money just by scheduling an extra pickup. Let's see if this gives me one more here. You gotta help me out here. Fast forward to the next slide. Time crunch. This one here, we can go back one. On Central Avenue, this is a location. This is another one. There was additional garbage outside the can. Driver recognized it, from our meetings with him. This is another positive resolve. They had a 1-yard container. That's a small 1 cubic yard, and we increased it. The customer agreed. Yes, I'm busier now. I have more business. I'm generating more trash. I'm generating more recycling. And this, for example, is a recycling can with extra boxes outside of it. I could tell by the white sticker on the side, no garbage. So it was a good thing. So now they've actually increased the recycling service from a 1 yard to a 1.5 yard container. Next slide shows the residents of, this is Sherman Plaza, 807 Davis. This was related to the Northwestern students moving out. This is another example. They claimed it was just a one-time incident. No further contact was made. Driver says it's been clean since this one time. So this is an example of, we got a little pushback from the customer. Customer says, we really don't need it right now. This is just a one-time incident. The driver just took a picture of it. So, but the driver knows now to look at it, to keep it in mind. Next slide. This will be the last slide. This is on Oak in Evanston. Driver recorded a picture of overflowing container. Customer was contacted regarding increasing service. At that time, mentioned 941 Chicago Avenue, also managed by this firm. Containers behind 518 Lee Street that have been overfilled. Further action still pending from these two locations, allowing customer 10 days to contact us regarding service issues. We continually see this garbage outside. It's unsightly. We understand it. Our drivers recognizes it. But we're come to the point, this is an example of we may need help from the city. Either, and the city of Chicago 15, 20 years ago, you probably remember, inspectors went out, overflowing cans, there was citations or whatever method there was that really cleaned it up. At some point, the garbage man can only do so much. I can identify it, I can contact them, I can tell them they need more service, but more service equals more cost. More bigger containers equals more cost. So sometimes we get pushback on that, and we will get pushback on that, and that's where we'll continue to work with the city to address these. But I think the overall picture here is that Grid Industries is striving, and we're working now with the residential as well, where we can identify overflowing stops residentially to communicate with the Streets and Sanitation Department. So these are technologies that are pretty impressive. Once the driver takes a picture, hits send, it uploads immediately from the truck to our computer system, and we can actually post this picture on their actual account. So they can call 10 minutes later or an hour later. We'll have that picture saying, well, we're looking at it. You got 2 yards laying on the ground, and it's a mess, and this is what you need. So technology now, even in the garbage business, is really advanced, and it's getting better and better, every year. So that's all the slides I have. I was asked to come and just address this, just to show what we're doing to help keep Evanston clean. It's a lot of work, but we do appreciate the city's help, because it takes both of us. I can only do so much as a garbage man. And then the city needs to know about it as well, and they can.
So just a couple of quick questions.
Sure.
You have to get out of here. So that property, 1575, is in the 4th Ward. Alderman Wilson is the alderman. So if we can get a copy of that, we'll be sure to pass that along with him, and I'm sure he will do the follow-up. What is the, are you sending this now to our city staff, to Public Works on a frequent basis?
It's scheduled with the monthly report that we send. We get we do a monthly report of volumes and weights of recyclables. It's now on our list of reports to send to the city staff. So
I would love to have you come back in 6 months and see if we've reduced that number significantly, and if we're receiving it on a monthly basis, we should be able to accomplish that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Perfect. Any other questions for Mr. Hilgon? Seeing none. Thank you very much, sir.
All right, thank you.
Have a good evening.
Yep.
Our next one is, do you want to take item A3 in front of A2? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. We have 2 speakers on item A3. Mr. Griffin, followed by Mr. Hill.
So, Mr. Hill,
Yes, you can, sir. Yes, sir. Is that for item A3? Okay.
And Peter, Mr. Hill had to leave.
Okay.
Good evening, committee. My name is Dale Griffin. I'm an Evanston resident for 30 years, and I'm speaking in favor of the City Council reviewing the hiring policy for people with criminal records for the purpose of increasing employment opportunities and reentry into society. I'm a retired actuary and manager at Healthcare Service Corporation. I'm a member of the Unitarian Church of Evanston and on the steering committee of the Unitarian Universalist Prison Ministry of Evanston, of Illinois. Since 2012, when I and many other members of my congregation read the book by Michelle Alexander, The New Jim Crow, we begin to realize that people coming out of prison face an additional punishment in the form of barriers to employment. This is one of many parts of the problem of mass incarceration, where the United States has 5% of the world's population and 20% of its prisoners. Based on religious values of inherent worth and dignity of all persons, and justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, we have worked toward restorative justice and compassionate treatment of prisoners and returning citizens. We've worked as members of the Chicago area organization Community Renewal Society to make many legislative changes that increase employment opportunities for people coming out of prison. I applaud your consideration of current hiring practices with the goal of increasing jobs, which decreases violence and recidivism. It seems that you've made changes to your policies in that direction, and I think that's wonderful. And this, the material that was included in the package from the National League of Cities and the National Employment Law Project seems to have good suggestions that could make Evanston policies even more proactive and a model for private employers. As Michelle Alexander says in The New Jim Crow, it will take a movement to solve this problem of mass incarceration, and I urge you to be part of that movement, and I thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Hill. Okay, he's not here.
Mr. Hill is gone.
Got it. Next, we have Ted Smuckler. Thank you, sir.
Good evening. Ted Smuckler. I'm the manager of organizing for Open Communities. And we're involved right now in an educational project and also a legislative project dealing with ex-offenders in housing. And one of the things we're responding to is the HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, has issued a guidance on disparate impact in housing, which basically says that if a policy of using criminal records to deny people housing has a disparate impact, it doesn't have to be intentional discrimination, but if it has a disparate impact on certain protected groups, particularly people of color, that it cannot stand as a policy, right? So on this aspect, I looked at the city's requirements for in terms of hiring ex-offenders, the ban the box requirement that this cannot be used until a hiring decision has been made, and then you can ask for people's background. I think your standards are stricter than what we are recommending in terms of housing decisions. They're stricter in terms of, I think there's a 10-year look-back period for certain felonies. People age out of crime. There's a lot of research on this, and plus, let's be frank here. People are much more likely to be convicted if they are people of color than white people. It's just a fact. It's not a fact that more crime is committed, but the convictions are much, much higher. I can say from personal experience, in the 1980s when people were being getting extensive prison sentences for drug offenses and drug dealing offenses. I was selling marijuana, and I was doing that from the comfort of my home, and I was not in much danger of being caught. Many people of color were dealing drugs on a street level and were much more in danger of being caught. At the time, I thought I was doing a community service. I'm not proud of this, but I'm saying this. As a white person, I was not under much risk. I think people of color are much more likely to be convicted and face issues with employment and with housing. So I would urge you to actually relax standards. We've been working on a project with the Coalition for Affordable Housing, the Chicago Area Fair Housing Alliance, on a just housing initiative. We've worked with Commissioner Suffredin on this to have a standard Cook County ordinance that issues a fairly a much lower standard.
I'm going to need you to wrap up soon.
Excuse me?
I'm going to need you to wrap up soon.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I think we could have, for instance, a 10-year look-back period is way longer than is necessary for safety precautions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. All right. I have Alderman Rainey first, followed by Alderman Simmons.
So just think, tonight we might have ditched an opportunity to have an organization who would hire ex-offenders at the City Grange operation, the garden program at 100 Chicago Avenue. Just saying.
Thank you, Alderman Rainey. Alderman Simmons.
So we hire ex-offenders, felons, people of color that have backgrounds. Where are we weak? Can someone explain to me what has inspired this new conversation?
Hello, Chair Braithwaite, members of the committee. I'm Erica Storley, Deputy City Manager. This issue first came up when Alderman Fleming referred it at APW a few months ago, but Kevin Brown couldn't be here tonight. He has another engagement. He wanted me to put forward some information that might be helpful to the committee, and that is that one area that we're specifically weak on is a formalized reentry program for ex-offenders that are reentering the community following incarceration. There's similar programs in other communities where a community would work directly with the incarcerating organization to sort of have a program where people would then re-enter, have stable employment for up to 6 months through a formal program where they would get training, supervision, and case management. That's something that is happening in other communities. I know Alderman Fleming shared a link earlier today about Winston-Salem, Oregon's program. He also talked about the fact that we do have this youth and young adult division, and they could perhaps provide case management, but there would have to be further vetting as far as what kind of budget this kind of program might need, et cetera, if it were a decision for the committee to direct us to look into it further. But also, he advised one area of the current policy that could use some improvement is sort of an umbrella. If there were to be a case-by-case basis, it could perhaps be referred to a small internal committee where there would be a review by the city manager, the police chief, and the youth and young adult services manager. So anybody that was not able to obtain employment via the existing policy that we have in place would have sort of an appeal process, and this would be at the behest of the youth and young adult services manager, Kevin Brown, if there were a person who could be placed into some seasonal employment or appropriate employment for job reentry or skills, then there could be that appeal process for the case-by-case basis.
Alderman Fleming.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Storley, for bringing this up. Yeah, so I referred this out because I have spoken to people in the community who asked me about this. This has not, been my personal experience, and so I asked Jennifer about our policy, and the questions that it brought up to me was, we have a lot of restrictions here, and then but it does also say case by case, and so one concern I had was I don't see where we lay out what that case by case review is. I'm not saying that, my question for this is not that we need to hire everyone, but I think we do need to be a city of second chances, and I think, even us commending and approving the money for the certificate of rehabilitation that the Moran Center does shows that we do value people having second chances in rehabilitation. Yet I have some people in the community said that was not their case. So I would love to see some more information about what that case-by-case basis is, because when I look at the policy from 2015, I don't see what that is. I don't see if that's the hiring manager who decides that. I don't see if that's the HR person who decides that. I don't see, really what that's based on. And understanding that human nature is to have a bias, I want to make sure that as a city, we are very clear on how we're gauging what that is. I am excited to see this isn't a star rating, and I know that's very, very important to us as a city, so this is a way for us to increase that point system, maybe. And then another question I did have was, in looking at this policy, it's from 2015, and just kind of wondering what we did before 2015. I mean, that we just, kind of what brought this on. Did we not do anything? Did the state law change and we decided we needed to make a policy? I'm not opposed to the policy, but I just always want to make sure that they're very thoughtful when we make them and that we revisit them as things change.
Good evening, members of the City Council. Jennifer Lane, HR Division Manager. Alderman Fleming, I
Can you
don't
speak into your
know
mic?
if there was a policy before 2015. When I arrived in 2015, I noticed that there was no such policy, nothing at all to generate anything. In fact, fingerprints weren't even being taken before I arrived. So I think I had started the conversation with the law department, and we had fully vetted this to ensure that it was very inclusive and not exclusive. We worked very hard in identifying different crimes that are, less important, and then crimes that are a little bit more pertinent to city employment. So we talked about all of those. We made sure that it was definitely a case-by-case basis. To answer your question that you had earlier about who vets the process, since this policy came into effect in 2015, I can't think of, there might have been one or two people who were disqualified as a result of that, and that was simply because they had were just released last week or 2 weeks ago. We didn't have any folks who fell into particular sections, except for maybe the one that Kevin Brown had originally brought to our attention, and that was a very significant felony conviction that had occurred several years ago, a very significant one that was very concerning for seasonal employment, especially in the Parks and Rec Department. So I think other than those, I can't think of anybody that's been disqualified. As far as the vetting process is concerned, usually we take a look at, it's usually going to be HR. HR is going to be taking a look at the type of employment, full-time, part-time, which department it is, what type of job duties and responsibilities are, especially what kind of crime it is, what kind of felony conviction it is, how long ago it was, if there's been a history of contact with the police departments or the criminal justice department since the crime. Usually a lot of these folks have a very old crime when they were very young, and it's been completely roses since then, and those are your typical star employees that could come in and they have a conviction from a long time ago that would not disqualify them from employment. There have been a few that I have looked at, and I make a recommendation. I usually refer it to Grant, and I say, hey, what do you think about this? He usually agrees with me when I recommend that the person be hired.
I thought no, I have another question.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm going to.
Okay, thank you. So can you just explain to me then, so this first category are people are ineligible, and then it gives this kind of year apart, 3 years, 5 years, whatever, from the time of the crime. And then the bottom, it says subject to review if something else. So let me look at it. I had a question, but I've lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
Okay. While you're thinking about it, I'll just convey one more thing that Kevin had asked me to say, that part of the need for a formalized reentry program is that when you do things on a case-by-case basis, there's been some resentment that's built up on the part of those who were not sort of approved by a case-by-case basis. So there's more of a chance for equity in the process if there's a formalized process for reentry that would include more people versus sort of a one-off case-by-case. This person made it in, this person didn't, we don't know why, et cetera.
Alderman Simmons.
I agree with the formalized process, and that way there aren't any issues of discrimination or any any issues at all. But I really just want to applaud our staff and our goals here, our commitment to second chances. I'm most impressed by a particular employee that has a criminal background, and at the same time, we maybe have been too liberal in other cases. So I would like us to be mindful that we are looking at the type of crime and the length and sticking to a standard so that we set an expectation for the community. That's the beauty of having community partners that are employers, and maybe they can provide opportunities for residents that aren't appropriate for employment with the city.
And I guess I want to thank Alderman Fleming for, raising this issue. I think this is something that there's definitely what I feel there's a commitment from the city, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that in the next couple of months, and I know you're serving on the committee, we're going to be looking with Alderman Wilson, Alderman Ravel, looking at alternative arrests. And so we've had a couple of preliminary meetings with Chief Eddington where we're trying to figure out what cases and the nature of those cases that we can move from sending them out to Skokie and then moving them to administration adjudication as a way of, again, similar to what we've done with the medical marijuana. I think we're going to be ahead of the state in being progressive and making those changes, which should hopefully, which I think is your goal, and bring this up, removing those barriers to employment. So I would agree. I think our staff is doing a really good job in making those concessions, and will continue to do so moving forward. Did you have?
I did.
Yep.
So I would like the staff to lay out, Jennifer, if you don't mind, lay out what that case by case is and who's involved in that process, if whether it's you and then Grant, or however that works, so that there is some clarity there. And I don't know if that's something, I guess Grant can work on, if that's something that we can even explain to or give a document we can give to people if they are not chosen, that they just have something to understand that there is a process. And then I would love it, Erica, if you could work on what the city could do in terms of being a reentry place of employment for certain individuals. I do want us to have parameters. I do want people to feel like they are safe with their children in our parks program, et cetera. But that you could work on something like that. I think that Mr. Greenwell or whatever, forgot his name, but having like Alderman Simmons said, having community partners. So we have the Moran Center that provides some great support. We have some churches, places of worship that could provide some great support for these people as they reenter. I know right now, because I did the research, we have about 49 people from Evanston who are Cook County Jail, about 18 who are on house arrest. And so if we think about those people who are going to be possibly re-entering our community, not that all of them are eligible or we have a position for all of them, but some of them can be productive members of our society. And I think it would be harmful if we did not think about that as an employer, yet we're asking other people in our city to maybe think about that. I think we have to lead by example. So thank you for working on that, and I would appreciate if you could bring that back. Alderman Braithwaite, do you know when they should bring that back? I don't have our calendar.
That could take place in two forms. It could either be by way of email, something they can email to you directly, or if you'd like to make another report to the committee.
I would like
at a
to
later
have
date.
another report, because hopefully I would like us to approve something more formalized.
Okay. City Manager?
Yes. The City Council, I think, Ms. Lynn, reviews the personnel rules when they're amended completely. So perhaps we could come back to the committee at the end of September. And then if it's necessary to amend the personnel rules at that point, that would come back at a future meeting after that. So, sorry, I don't have my September dates memorized, but the fourth Monday in September, we could come back with this.
Okay.
And Erica Storley, can you bring back something more about what a reentry program would look like at that same meeting or at some time?
And I think we also need to look as far as the reentry programs. I don't know if we're suggesting that the city of Evanston sponsors the reentry program. I think it's perhaps looking for other partners.
Sure.
Certainly there's funding issues associated with that. So I think we can bring back those options, but I don't think we were proposing that the city of Evanston was going to have the reentry program, but rather we would be partnering with someone
I would
else.
love for us to bring it back for another conversation about what it would look like for the city and or partners.
Okay. And that will be, if we could come back at the second meeting in September.
That sounds great.
That'd be great.
All right. Thank you very much. We have one last item, which is the role of residency in city appointment. Who's got that?
closest to the mic, so I'll come up. I believe there's information in the packet. Currently, I'm the only person required to live here, so if the council would like to make other changes, certainly I think we see it as a challenge in the employment pool to have people live here in Evanston. I think we have been in the 20 to 25% range in the 8 years I've been city manager, so I think that that's been a steady thing, but certainly given the wide variety of programs and skill sets that we have, it remains a competitive marketplace. So certainly we'd be happy to come back with additional information if there's a particular direction, if you're looking for all city employees to live in Evanston, if just certain classes of employees, we certainly look at that. I think some of our neighboring communities other than the city of Chicago have had some challenges with that for many of the same sort of reasons, but we would look for your policy direction.
Do you want to take? Okay.
So when I asked for this, what I was thinking is not for all employees. I don't think that we have the capacity for that in terms of the skill set we need. What I was interested in, and maybe this is a report you can come back with, was our entry-level positions, whatever class that might be. Would that be a good entry point for us to look at holding a percentage or just a number of those positions for our Evanston residents? I'm thinking more of the young people we have graduating ETHS who we know are not going right away to college or who have come home from college for whatever reasons. Again, that the city might model what we're asking our community businesses to do and hire our local talent.
And Alderman Fleming, members of the committee, I know many of you are aware of the apprentice programs that we've had in our Public Works Department. I just signed offer letters today for 4 or 5 individuals. I think they were all Evanston residents, and so that has been what we have done. I think as the council has talked about this in the past, I think there are some legal difficulties when you get that precise, excluding all folks to have those programs, and I would look to the city attorney. I think I'm on the right track with this, aren't I, Mr. Farrar? Yes, it would deserve further study. So, certainly we can maybe talk more about the Apprentice Program. Alderman Braithwaite, you've been a very big proponent of that over the last several years. I think that we've been able to do in a way that I think is meets the kind of goals that you're talking about, but also doing it lawfully. We have a collective bargaining agreement with those entry-level employees, many of who are here tonight. So certainly, there are collective bargaining issues associated with this as well. But if Mr. Chairman, if this is the committee's desire, perhaps we can also come back at that second meeting in September. Mr. Farrar can look at the legal parameters associated with that. But if you're looking at those entry-level positions, those union represented AFSCME positions being exclusively for Evanston residents, we can look at some of the parameters that might make sense.
And maybe I always like to ask the question, what problem are we trying to solve? And if I was to take a guess, the goal is to try to do more to hire within Evanston, which, totally makes sense to me. And one of the things that isn't contained in this, and we've asked for this in many different formats, maybe take another look by department and look at how many residents each department has, and then wherever we see a disparity, a void, we can maybe talk about goals around how to effectively market. We've done that with police and fire. With fire, we have a academy that we gear towards our high school students. I think the police department is starting to do the same thing. And I know I also, along with other members, like to pay attention to the racial balance as well, that our city staff mirrors to the best of our ability, the residents, the population that's in Evanston. So if we could look at those numbers maybe back in September when you bring back the other issue.
And I think the Apprentice Program and the expansion of that has been the result of those numbers in Public Works.
Sure.
But is the Apprentice Program, am I correct, is that 10 people? Or somewhere thereabouts? I think I met with Director Stonebeck.
We hire 4 from the water and sewer funds, and then we hire 2 out of general funds. So there's a total of 6. And then just this year, in the water fund, we also hired 2 water plant operators. So I guess, correcting myself, there's 6 apprentices hired out of the water or sewer funds and 2 out of the general fund.
Okay. So given that Chicago is doing this, I think, for most all of their staff, not to create a legal nightmare, can you bring back at that September meeting some more information that Alderman Braithwaite has requested? But also, I guess I would like to make sure, I'm assuming, and maybe this is a huge assumption, that we have some jobs that are not union. And so is there a way that we can look at legally having some jobs or having some folks? I'm appreciative of the program that Dave runs with Apprentice, but it's 8 jobs. And I would think that we can be creative if our budget line allows to create some more opportunities for our.
And maybe I can pick up where you're leaving off, and that is, are there positions that we give preference points for Evanston residents that we hire for the city? I don't know.
Police and fire, Chief Polyp is here. And I don't believe we do it for general employees, do we?
Just police and fire.
Do you know if there are any other cities that has a similar program where preference points are given for residents?
I think most of the
Thank you.
Most of the communities that I reached out to and got feedback from, police and fire always have their Civil Service Commission grant preference points to entry-level police and fire. However, the other ones are going to be probably an incentive of some sort, not necessarily a preference point, because we don't give points to other candidates other than police and fire, so there would be no ability to give them preference in any way. An idea might be to give some sort of housing incentive.
Okay.
That might be a logical way to prefer Evanston residents.
Okay. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, if you'll let us continue to noodle this, we'll come back at the fourth Monday in September.
Perfect. Thank you very much. All right. Looking at the time, are there any other items for communication? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Our meeting is adjourned. Our city council meeting will start in 15 minutes. What is that? By 8? How about 8 minutes? All right. 8:30. This meeting is adjourned.